Welcome to section 1.3. We're going to be talking about linear equations in two variables. And I just realized I forgot an important one, standard form. Now for standard form, it's very similar to general form. It's just ax plus by equals c. One thing difference between general form and standard form is that general form, it equals 0, so everything's on the left-hand side. For standard form, the x and the y are on the left-hand side, and the constants on the right-hand side. For a vertical line, as we talked about at the end of the last lesson, vertical line is in the form of x equals a number. Horizontal line, y equals a number. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Point slope form, y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. We're going to be working with that one quite a bit. And two-point form is very similar to point slope form. We don't use this often, if ever. All they did is instead of writing m, they wrote the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's identical to point slope form, except you find the slope at the same time as you plug in the points. Slope of a line, it's that rise over run, the horizontal over the vertical, also known as delta y over delta x. Delta meaning the change in y over the change in x. So now if we're thinking about what slope means as far as having a positive slope, it means the line is going to rise from left to right. So here's a line with a positive slope. It's rising as we go from left to right. Negative slope falls from left to right. So it might look something like this. Excuse me. Slope of 0. A line with a slope of 0 is a horizontal line. So that would have that equation y equals b, because all the y values on this line are the same. X will change, but y remains the same. And an undefined slope is a vertical line. X equals a, because on that line, all of the x coordinates are the same, but the y coordinates change. Keep in mind for a slope of 0, when we think about rise over run, there's no rise, so it's 0 divided by a number equals 0. And for an undefined slope, there's a rise, so it's a number divided by 0, and division by 0 is undefined. And that's why it's an undefined slope, because there is no run. Parallel lines, coplanar lines that don't intersect. The important thing for algebra, they have the same slope. Remember parallel lines from geometry, put little arrows on them. Perpendicular lines, they intersect to form a right angle. The slopes are opposite and reciprocals. They intersect to form a right line. So if you want to think about opposite reciprocals, if we have 1/2, the opposite reciprocal of 1/2 is -2. The opposite reciprocal of -1/3, for example, would be 3. So those slopes would be perpendicular. If we had a 2, -1/2. If we had a -1, the opposite reciprocal of that is actually a +1. So those are opposite reciprocals. Now let's use some of this information. Here we have an equation. A manufacturing company determines the total cost of producing X units. They're defining their variables. Of a product is C equals 25X plus 3,500. What is the significance of the y-intercept and the slope of this line? So the total cost is C, and X is the number of units. So our slope, that's the rate of change. That's the rate. That's how much it cost. So it's $35 for every 1 unit. That's the cost per unit. Whereas our y-intercept, that's when X is 0. So that's producing no units. We have to have a cost anyway. So our y-intercept is at 0 and 3,500. That is maybe a startup cost or initial cost. The y-intercept is our starting point. And the slope is our rate of change. The maximum recommended slope of a wheelchair ramp is 1/12. A business is installing a wheelchair ramp that rises 22 inches over a horizontal length of 24 feet. We want to make sure that ramp is not steeper than the recommended. Now, if you notice, we have inches and we have feet. We want to make sure we're working with the same units. So I want to keep inches as inches. I'm going to change my 24 feet to inches. So 24 feet, we're going to multiply by 12 inches over 1 foot. Because there's 12 inches in 1 foot, so the feet cancel. We're left with 288 inches. So now our slope, our rise over the run. Our rise, it's rising 22 inches over 288 inches. The units cancel out, which is good, which is what we're going to have. And now we can reduce that to 11 over 144. Now we want to make sure it's not steeper than 1/12. So we want 1/12 to be the larger number. And you can convert both of them to decimals and compare that, or 1 over 12, 11 over 144. And what you can do here is you can cross multiply. 144 times 1 is 144. 12 times 11 is 132. And you can see the 144 is bigger. So 1/12, that's where the greater than goes. 1/12 is greater than 11 over 144. So because of that, we're good. The ramp is not steeper than the recommendation. So that way it's a safe ramp, it passes inspection. Problem number 3, we're going to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that passes through the 2 given points. So think slope-intercept form. We need the slope, we need the y-intercept. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to find the slope. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1, x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So for our y's, so I'll call that x1, y1, x2, y2. So we have negative 2 minus 7 over 4 minus negative 2. So we have negative 9 over 6. So our slope reduces to negative 3/2. Always reduce your fractions if they can be reduced. So now I'm going to use my point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And now we can pick either one of those given points. I'm going to pick the point to negative 2, 7 just because. So I have y minus 7 equals negative 3/2, x minus negative 2. So I have my y minus 7 equals negative 3/2 times x plus 2. And I'm going to distribute now. So I have y minus 7 equals negative 3/2 x. Negative 3/2 times 2 is going to be minus 3. Now to get y by itself, just add 7 to both sides. So you get y equals negative 3/2 x plus 4. So there we go. We have our equation now in slope-intercept form. We didn't have to solve for b and substitute back in. Already done for us. Let's do one more. Problem number 4. This one's fun because of the fractions. Still starting the same way. We have 2 points. We need to find the slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Negative 2/3 minus 1 over 6 minus 1. Now, the denominator is easy. 6 minus 1 is 5. The tricky part is that top part of the fraction where we want to now make sure we have a common denominator, which is 3. So it's negative 2 over 3 minus 1, which is the same as minus 3/3. So that's going to give us negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5, so negative 5/3 over 5. We don't divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So the slope, negative 5/3 times the reciprocal of 5, which is 1/5. Simplify before you multiply, the 5 becomes a 1, and then negative 5 becomes a negative 1. So we multiply, we end up with just negative 1/3 as our slope. Now we'll pick a point to go through. I'm going to pick 1, 1. Y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. Y minus 1 equals negative 1/3 times the quantity of x minus 1. Y minus 1, and distribute negative 1/3 x plus 1/3. Add 1 to both sides. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 1/3, and 1 is the same as 3/3, so plus 3/3. So in the end, we end up with y equals negative 1/3 x plus 4/3. Fractions are very important for this class. We're going to be using them fairly regularly. So if you need extra help with fractions, please let me know. It's a very important skill to have at your disposal anytime in math. We're going to stop here for now, and we'll come back for part 2 at a later time. Thank you.